Vanessa, thank you so much for coming in. Charging what you're worth sounds very easy to me, to be honest. You work out what your costs are and you divide it by how long you're going to work on the thing or something like that. You come up with a little formula, bish bash bosh, a number that you should charge for a particular job. But what you're saying is actually there's a little bit more to it than that.
Well, I wanted to focus particularly on solicitors' firms because I think it's quite challenging for them. Of course, we all know that they charge by the time, and they usually do it in units, or often do it in units of about 6 minutes at a time. But if you think about it, they're often being interrupted by the phone. So they're in the middle of doing something for a client, and then they're supposed to stop the clock on that and start the clock again on another client when they're speaking to them on the phone, and they're going backwards and forwards. So I think it's quite challenging in the first place for them to do the time recording correctly. And then there's two aspects of their work. There's the process part, which could be the form filling or the drafting of letters, etc. And then there's their thinking time. And there's both conscious and unconscious thinking time. Now, I can pretty well bet my bottom dollar that they don't charge for any unconscious thinking time, nor am I necessarily suggesting that they do. But it's important that they understand that that unconscious thinking time is part of their expertise.
Unconscious thinking time. I haven't quite got a grasp of what that might be. Explain a little bit more.
So when you have an expertise and you've got clients' problems to work on, your subconscious or your unconscious mind will actually be working on them when you're not thinking about it. So to give you an example, my formula that I use, the UV plus CV plus CA equals CW, the understanding value, communicating value, comfortable asking for payment and charging what you're worth, actually appeared in my mind when I was in bed. So I knew it had come from the unconscious part of my brain, which is where the expertise is held. So I didn't sit down consciously and say, I'm going to come up with a formula and this is what it's going to be. So it was presented to me in my own mind while I was half asleep. And I thought, that's brilliant. So I recognised it as being brilliant. And that will also be happening for lawyers as well. They might be driving in their car down the highway or down the road, and suddenly they go, ping, oh, that's what I could do for so-and-so and so-and-so client. Thus saving loads of time for consciously sitting down and working out what the problem or what the solution will be to the problem.
So you're not saying that they should account for that time literally as time, but the value of the thoughts that's gone into it.
Absolutely.
All right.
So it's for them to understand, therefore, that because they have such an expertise, they're tapping into answers from their unconscious mind without having to put any effort in. But that doesn't mean to say it's not valuable. That means it's incredibly valuable, because there's no way that their client could do that. Do you understand? So the value is huge of that.
Are there any other areas where people may not be accounting for their effort and time?
Yes. Now, I've been told by a large firm of solicitors, at least one, if not more than one, that fee earners very often will discount in their projects. And sometimes I've been told they even double discount. So they're discounting more than once in a project. So what's going on in their mind, you might be thinking? Well, they're looking at how much money is being accumulated, or what the costs are for the client, and they're making the assumption that the client won't pay. And so they lose some of it, they discount it. And the most horrendous thing that I was told was that they don't even communicate that to the client.
Why are they doing that?
Because in their own mind it's too much, because they don't feel comfortable. And as human beings, we'll only do something if we feel comfortable with it, because by our very nature, we're pleasure seekers, and so we'll tend to move towards pleasure and move away from pain. So if the fee earner looks at the amount of money and they're feeling pain, they'll think, what can I do to get away from the pain? I know, I'll discount, and then present it to the client. Now, those people are likely to be uncomfortable talking about fees in the first place with the client. And they certainly haven't gone through the process with the client of finding out what the value to the client will be, because I also know that those very same people who've discounted without telling the client, when they do present the bill, the client's still complaining about the bill. So in that sense, you'd think, well, then they can't charge everything that they should be charging for. But actually, it's because they haven't had the conversation up front with the client to understand, so the client knows. They might have talked about their hourly rate, but that's not really much help to a client if they don't know how much that's going to be in the long term, and if they haven't found out how important it is to the client to have this job done.
So a continual conversation with the clients?
Yes, it can be, because if they think up front, well, this is how long I reckon it will take, but actually it could be that the situation is more complicated than they originally thought, then communicating with the client, to me, is really paramount.
Now, you've written a booklet
I
on
have.
this. Tell me what it's called.
It's called True Worth, How to Charge What You're Worth and Get It.
A perfect title for the subject, I would imagine. And how do we get that book?
To get that book, you just need to go to the website, www.thetrueworthexpert.com, and order a copy from there.
Vanessa, thank you so much for coming in.
My pleasure.